very off-putting. There's a box of Ferrero Rocher and a bottle of champagne behind me. Right, follow that, as they say. Okay, I'm Chris Sexton. I'm from Sheffield, and Martin and I are just going to wrap up, really. I'm going to do a few minutes on what I was asked to do, which was dealing with innovation, and then Martin's going to come on and give you his sort of takeaways, I think, from the conference, and with a bit of luck, to look as though we've planned it. So, innovation. This is really from my perspective, from an IT director's perspective, of how do we deal with innovation. Now, you might wonder what I mean by that. So I thought, you know, always, if you're going to talk about something, define it. So where do you go to define something? You go to Wikipedia. And I found something that wasn't a definition of innovation, but something I quite liked, which was a definition of what it isn't. And definition of innovation, if you like, turning it on its head of what it's not invention, because invention is about the use of something better, a novel idea, whereas invention is actually the creation of the idea itself, which I thought was quite nice. It's also not improvement, because improvement actually means doing something better rather than doing something different. So I think they're quite nice little sort of descriptions of what innovation isn't. So, what do I mean about how we deal with innovation? Now, if you talk to many CIOs, or even if you Google innovation in IT departments, you'll always come up with this phrase, this keeping the lights on. And any IT director or CIO will say to you, oh, we haven't got time to innovate. You know what? We spend all of our time keeping the lights on. Spend all our time just doing stuff, just making sure things keep running and people want us to do more and more. We haven't got time to innovate. And there's been various studies, you know, 85% of CIOs say that they don't innovate because they've just got to keep the lights on. And also there's a risk around it. They're frightened of innovating because they have to keep things running. We have to keep the IT systems running. We have to keep the payroll systems running. We have to keep the network running. You don't want to innovate. And I have to say, there are some areas where you don't particularly want to. The last thing you want is a particularly innovative network manager, I can tell you. You want one that's just going to keep it going. So when I was sort of looking at this, I found another blog, because that sort of analogy of keeping the lights on, it's never sat very comfortably with me, and I found this really nice blog by somebody who said, you know, we've got to ditch this phrase, we're too busy keeping the lights on to innovate. Keeping the lights on, actually, from an IT perspective, is very complex. Using this sort of analogy that it's a bit like just keeping the lights on is doing a disservice to everybody who works in an IT department. It's very complex. If you think of all the things that get thrown at us, you know, things like supporting mobile technology, supporting different sorts of software around the place, actually we're doing people a disservice saying, oh, you know, we're just keeping the lights on. There's so much demand on us. Our understanding of what on means, I think, is changing. And I'm going to come back to that at the end. So, I suppose I ought to talk about how we innovate and how we could innovate in our departments. One way some people have done it, some universities, some organisations, is set up innovation groups, innovation teams, innovation hubs. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of people who have. By the way, I use a lot of pictures. Tend not to be a lot of words on my slides, and pictures tend to be to remind me what to say. So I have a colleague who used to be a CIO at Virgin Atlantic, and they set up an innovation team. I think there was 5 or 6 people there at Virgin, and they worked outside of the IT department. It was quite interesting. They were a separate team, headed by a separate head, and they had, their role was to innovate. And they had a lovely rule, which was what they call the 2x2 rule, which is if there was an issue that they wanted to solve, they had 2 days to solve the problem and 2 weeks to deliver the solution. That was it. If it took more than two weeks, they weren't doing it. But the other thing they had to do was anything they delivered, because they were only an innovation team, they weren't a production team, they didn't run anything, they had to hand it over to the IT team to run. So whatever they delivered had to be deliverable, if you like, by the IT department. So they had to work really closely with the IT department, but they were separate. Really interesting model, and it's a model that I know is in place in other places. I've just put that up there because Virgin Atlantic actually do some really innovative stuff, and they were the first to introduce Google Glass on their check-in assistant, so they knew all about you when you were checking in. I know some universities have done it, some have IT hubs, IT teams within the IT departments and sit outside. It's a way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to have good ideas. Now, I mean, I'm going to state the obvious in some of my talk, because we all have good ideas. People in our teams have good ideas, but often they're not, those ideas are not, if you like, brought to delivery. I'm only going to give you a couple of examples. Apologies if you can't read that slide. It's a copy of a Facebook page. It's one of our Facebook pages. like many people, we have graduation ceremonies. We film the graduation ceremony, and then at the end of the ceremony we offer it at an exorbitant price to the students, or actually the parents of the students who have graduated, who spend £10–15 on that DVD, or more often now a USB stick, with an hour-and-a-half graduation ceremony. And now, they're not really interested in the hour-and-a-half graduation ceremony. They're interested in that 2 minutes where the name of their son or daughter is read out, they walk across the stage, they shake the hand, and they carry on. So one of my team who'd been doing this and who was responsible for filming it came up to me and said, you know what, exactly what I've just said, they're not interested in it, they're interested in the handshake. What can we do about it? So he came up with a really good idea that we would sell the handshake video by putting it on Facebook. So students now at Sheffield can pay a £5, nice little income stream if I can sell it to enough students. They pay a £5, and in return for that they get their handshake, so their name being read out and walking across the stage, shaking the hand of the Chancellor and walking off the other end of the stage it's about 2 or 3 minute video. And they love it. That was just a good idea that somebody had, came to me, and we had a very quick way of implementing it. You know, no governance around it at all, really, just go ahead and do it. The other way of innovating is serendipity. Sometimes things just happen. I'm going to give you another example, and I'm giving you these examples for a reason, which I'll come to at the end, which is we were chatting to a photographer. He happened to be one of our students, but he was an accredited Google photographer, which means they can go into buildings and take these 360 views, and they can take really high quality gigapixel photos. And we were chatting to him about him taking pictures of the campus, and he casually said he quite fancied doing a picture at a graduation ceremony. So immediately we said, that's fantastic, come and do it. All it took was us negotiating with the ceremonies office to allow this photographer to go on the stage for about 2 minutes at the start of the ceremony and take one of these big gigapixel photos. We then upload it. Students can zoom in. They're amazing, these pictures. You've probably seen you can zoom into an individual face, but the sort of innovative thing was they can then tag it on Facebook so all their friends can see it. Now, he just happened to be in my office talking about something else. He had a good idea, made a passing comment about it. We said, brilliant, let's do it. And again, the thing about innovation, serendipity happens, but you have to be in a position to be able to take up that innovation. Now, my favourite in all of these about how to innovate is using our students. And I think it's something we don't do often enough. I'm going to tell you a little story which culminated in this. About 3 years ago, JISC, the new JISC, had some money for innovation. And it put together a small group to look at how it might spend this money on innovative projects. And I was luckily part of that group. And I remember sitting around a table, quite a long table, there were probably about 15–20 people around it, and we were having a very in-depth discussion about how we could spend what was quite a lot of money on innovation. And about halfway through, I suddenly said, hang on a minute, are we the right people to be discussing innovation projects? And they were all around improving the student experience. Just look around the table. Now, I would say the average age, and I'm going to be very generous here, was about 45 around this table, and the paper that was piled up on the table was about this thick. There was one person around the table with anything electronic. It was me with my iPad. Everybody else had got paper spread all over the place. And I said, do you really think, you know, we're the right people to think about digital innovations for students? Why don't we just ask the students what they want? My suggestion was we lock a group of students in a room for a week and see what they came out with. They wouldn't let me do that. So just put together this summer of student innovation. Some of you have heard of it, I hope you've all heard of it, where it's been running for 3 years now, where we just basically ask students if they've got any ideas. And if they've got good ideas, just funds them to develop them. The ideas are all put on it's called an elevator website. People vote on them, and the top few get funded. And I say in its third year now, we've had some brilliant ideas from students, some of which have actually gone into production. It's worth a look if you haven't seen the page. I'll give you another example of how you can use students to innovate. This is University in Holland. They decided they had so much data, they were generating data from all over the place and didn't know what to do with it. And one of the things they looked at was wireless data. If you think about, you know, in a building, the wireless network is collecting information about where you are, what device you've got, what you've connected, but nobody does anything with it. So they gave this data to their students and said, you know what, see what you can come up with. Well, the students start coming up with infographics. First of all, to show who were more active. Apple users more active than Windows, Android more than iOS, girls more active than boys, students more than teachers, hipsters more active than nerds. There you go, that was an interesting one. And then they started developing apps. And they developed a smoke detector app, which really just detected people who nipped out the building and then came back in again a few minutes later. Figured out they'd been out for smoke, worked out how many people were smoking at the time and how many minutes people had wasted smoking. They did a where's my device. If you left your device, where was it? It told you what room it was in. My favourite one again was the one at the top right, which was a virtual in-out board. So, you know, you've got these boards as you come in a building and you have to move in and out. They did it using whether your device was connected to the wireless network. Okay, if your device was in the building, it said you were present. If it wasn't, it changed. Now, of course, if you've left the building and left your iPhone on your desk, that was a problem. But it was just an example of how if you give students stuff, they'll innovate for you. And again, I don't think we use them enough. This, apologies, this looks beautiful on my screen here. Does anybody know what this is? You do, okay. Anybody who doesn't come from Lancaster University, you know what that is? Okay, that's Lancaster University being built in Minecraft. Okay, so at Lancaster they get their students in, I think it's half a day a week, Wednesday afternoon, and the Student Gaming Society comes in and they're building Lancaster University in Minecraft. I think it's fantastic. And I know the guy who set this up and he said they'd never thought about it. You know, I would never have thought about building Sheffield University in Minecraft, but our students might have done. So I think using students is a great way of doing it. If you're going to look at innovation, you have to look at managing ideas. You can do that by all sorts of different ways. We happen to use a piece of software called IdeaScale, but there's loads of innovation and ideas management software on the market. It's a way of generating ideas. People submit ideas. You can vote on them. You can comment on them. You can gamify it, so that you get points for how many ideas you've commented on or voted on. And it's a really good way of gathering ideas from across your campus, because I think the one thing about innovation is don't think that IT innovations come from the IT department. Your innovations will come from all over the campus. So you have to sort of manage them. The other thing you have to do is if you are going to have a campaign to innovate, you have to fund things. Don't just think innovation is free. Some of it is. We use crowdfunding. This is our crowdfunding page for student ideas. It's not just IT. This is our enterprise ideas, but some of them are IT. But there's all sorts of innovative ways of funding innovation. And I'm just saying you just have to think about it if you're going to go down that route. Now, I'm going to finish just by covering something. It's a bit serious for me, this. I'm not normally very serious. But this is a bit of theory, and it's because it's something that I'm quite interested in. It's a Gartner, some of you may have heard about Gartner, theory, or it's not really just a theory, it's something that they are recommending that you put into practice. And I've done quite a few workshops on it with my team, and I like the idea of it. Okay, it's something they call Bimodal IT. And what Bimodal IT is managing two different sorts of IT in your department. You have the sort of stable, this mode one, this traditional, this sequential, safe, accurate, the sorts of traditional ways of developing things that we've always used. 2-year projects to implement a new payroll system. Let's just take that as an example. Whereas what we need, I think more and more now in our departments, is a much more fast, agile, non-linear, not things coming after each other, speedy way of innovating. And they call this bimodal, and basically what they're saying to us is you're going to have to manage both of these things in your department. And their message to us is that we should care about it. We shouldn't just go, oh, that's just another burden, because actually with the amount of change that's going on in digital business, we're going to have to do this. And their recommendation is that if we only think we can manage with one form of IT in our departments, we're going to fail. So they have this theory that we're moving away from what they call industrialisation IT. We started off with, if you like, craftsmanship. We've been in this industrial area, and we're moving into this digitalisation era where everything is going to be digital, and we're going to have to adapt to cope with that. And they use the analogy, which I quite like, of runners. So that, we've got a lot of marathon runners at the moment. We do long projects, very stable, we know where we're going, and we deliver at the end of it. Quite linear, and we're into, services, solutions, efficiency, effectiveness, whereas actually what we need are sprinters. We need sprinters to be able to deliver things fast, in a very agile and very flexible way. And they have this theory that you have different modes of operating. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but I think one of the things I am going to say is that they are both different but both essential. Okay, you need in your departments, in IT departments, in fact probably all departments, both kinds. One is not more important than the other. And I think if you are going to go down this innovation route, if you're going to have innovation teams, innovation hubs, if you're going to have student idea innovation competitions, if you're just going to create, this mode 2 agile way of working, the people who are working in the mode 1 are just as important. And I think that's something we have to get through to people. The skills of the two different modes are absolutely vital. You need both of them. You won't survive without both of them. However, I think this is important that great marathon runners don't automatically make great sprinters. We all know that. And to become if you are a marathon runner who's going to become a great sprinter, you need these skills over on the right-hand side. Now, I was slightly worried when I first saw these because I didn't know what the top word was, and I did slightly misread it. And was slightly confused about where it's going. Neophilia. Wonderful word. I keep trying to get it into conversations, but I haven't managed it yet. Does anybody know what it means? It's somebody who likes new and novel things. So there you go. If you like new and novel things, you can call yourself a neophiliac, but be careful. So you do need people who are comfortable with ambiguity, good at change, and very empathetic with users. They've got a mission mindset. They've got good internal relationships. They're team orientated, but they have to have the hard skills as well. If you're going to do this, you have got to have the hard technical skills as well. And you can see, I think, from looking at some of those skills, that it might not be easy to transform from being a marathon runner to a sprinter, so you may have to think differently about some of the sorts of people that we're actually employing. So I'm going to finish my little bit before Martin comes on, to back with the keeping the lights on. I think keeping the lights on innovation IT are not mutually exclusive, but what I think we need to do is perhaps be more innovative in how we keep the lights on. So I'm going to finish and hand over to Martin, who's going to wrap up.
Thank you, Chris. I think we should have a round of applause for Chris. That was very cool. That also conveniently gives me time to switch to my slides, and they're a little bit different. Now, I would say I just tested these earlier on the big screen, and I realized that Sway, which is the tool I'm using for this, there's some quite fancy transition effects, and that's a roundabout way of saying if you get motion sickness, you may wish to look away now. So without further ado, let's see if this works. So what I wanted to do was link some of the points that Chris has raised to some of the stuff that's come up yesterday and today. But if you don't know me, I am a neophile, so I'm Disk's futurist. So my job is to think about all those sorts of things that Chris just talked about, and actually, how do we put those things into practice? And I'd like to think that we've got a room full of sprinters or marathon runners who are trying to turn themselves into sprinters. Would you agree? If you see yourself as a sprinter, could you raise your hand up? And if you want to be a sprinter, but maybe there's a little bit more work to do, this is good. So, anybody want to be a marathon runner? No. Okay. Thank you. So, what did we learn? Well, we learned that this is an amazing place, and I ripped off Neil's photos for the opening slide, but this is an amazing place, not just this building, but this whole site. So I think this is possibly one of the most inspirational places that you could come for what's actually been a couple of days of really inspirational talks and messages from people. So well done for that, and thank you, Salford. We've seen quite a few really inspirational things, and for me, probably number one here was this wonderful physical questionnaire. So I'm now going to go away and think, oh, wow, when I want to sound people out on things. Maybe there are all kinds of ways of doing that aren't give them a questionnaire on a web page or an app, let's say. We also saw some nice examples of things like the cartoon, the storytelling approach, and I was very pleased that we didn't have 2 days of death by PowerPoint. Or actually, I probably should say actually we did, because nearly all of the slides were PowerPoint slides, but we didn't have death by bullet point, and that's probably more important. So that was great. And we got some wonderful aphorisms. I think I'm using the right terminology there. So digital literacies have to be meaningful, authentic, and situated. I love that. I love the cartoon that went with it as well. I think you really nailed it, Joe. We also had some nice back chatter from the machines. So it's very interesting to see, the conversation that happens face-to-face in public in a session like this. But of course, there are a lot of people here. We can't have a sort of round-table discussion very easily. So the back-channel chatter that happens is very interesting. And then I thought that actually led on quite nicely to what Alan was saying about, well, actually, the machines are chattering too. And I'll come back to that bit in a minute. But whilst it was inspirational, I thought there were also some signs of doom and gloom. It may be something to do with the Manchester weather. There's a cloud or two out there now. And the particular clouds that came up for me, this whole business about the nature of education. What are we preparing people for? We're preparing people for a world which is probably going to be quite different to the world that they're used to. When you start school and when you leave school, an awful lot of things can change. I have 2 kids at school right now. One of them's just started reception. I think the world that she will be entering when she leaves school will be so vastly different to the norm that we have now that for us it might be unrecognizable. The pace of technological change has advanced so much. That's quite a sobering thought. And hey, if I was a student right now, we heard quite a few comments about, well, what actually do I want from my institution? How do I want to engage with my institution? Get off Facebook. I don't want you trying to be my friend. But then we've also heard, I think Chris's example just now is perfect, we've also heard how you can make quite savvy use of these tools and these places, social places where students will choose to be in a way which isn't heavy-handed. So I think it's not all bad. And we got to find the Blue Peter Garden, which was brilliant. So well done, Tarzana. However, rust never sleeps. So the march of the machines goes on and on and on. We've had a lovely time here, but meantime, all kinds of stuff has happened. I just wanted to throw a couple of things up there. So a few people noticed that I was wearing this little clip thing here, and said, what's that? And this video does not have sound, so it might play. Let's see. So yesterday I was life logging, and here's an interesting thing. I was just carrying this thing around. I've edited out people's faces, so you won't see too many selfies in there. What happens when your students start doing this? What happens when a student who has a personal tutor says to the personal tutor, well, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to record all our meetings, just in case there's any disputes later on. This technology is actually here right now. This is a real product. It started off as a Kickstarter. And the next version of it, which you can pre-order now, this version uses a USB cable, uploads via a laptop. The next version uploads wirelessly. So the data has already flown off into the cloud. So these things stimulate some quite interesting discussions. And this is stuff which is, as I say, is here right now. If you're interested in life logging, if you're interested in this concept of transparency, go and read Dave Edgar's book, The Circle. In fact, has anybody here read that? So I'll talk to you later. So The Circle is really all about what happens if we take that to the nth degree. What happens if we take it to its ultimate logical conclusion? So I won't spoil the story by telling you any more about it. It's a very interesting book. And the reality for me, I've been playing with this for a while. An awful lot of my pictures look like that one on the right there. So there's the laptop, I'm on the train, I've got my coffee, sorted. And I flip through the video I make of, a day in the life, if you like, and blow me down, there's an awful lot of that. And if it's not the cup of coffee and sat on the train, it's the cup of coffee sat at a desk somewhere. And yes, there's an ever-present screen. So actually the life logging can be quite interesting in the sense that it shows you that you don't really have so much of a life. It's time to get out and do something more interesting. But there we go. So this morning I did do something more interesting, and it did involve screens, and a few people saw we've been experimenting with telepresence robots. So we're doing an event up in Edinburgh today where we have a telepresence robot, which is this thing made by our firm called Doubles. And the double robot, essentially, it's like a Segway that you stick an iPad on top of. And then you can remote control it from your phone, tablet, or laptop. So we've got this robot trundling around. We can have actually quite natural conversations once the person at the other end has suspended their disbelief that they're talking to an iPad on a stick on wheels. And you can just about, in one of these pictures, you might be able to see, yeah, you can just about make out the bottom of the robot there. So you can actually peek down just to see if you're about to bump into somebody, or, you know, it's about to plummet downstairs or something. Unfortunately, they can't really do stairs yet, and there's no button to make a little finger come out to call the lift so that you can take the lift down. That will come. So the other thing here is I've been using this tool called Sway, and Microsoft announced this a little while ago. I think this is very interesting as a kind of signifier of how a firm, which we thought of in very specific terms, has changed so absolutely and completely. The fact that Sway exists is one thing, but the fact that Sway is cross-platform, it's quite happily running on your tablet, it runs quite happily on your Apple tablet and your Google tablet. This is actually quite a big deal. So I would suggest that if Microsoft can do this, then we can all do this. It is possible to pivot to the degree that Microsoft have, no matter who you are. You can do it if you are sufficiently motivated. So what else? Well, just now we found out that a college in Nottinghamshire has banned watches in exams. So remember, my rust never sleeps. The college has banned banned students from bringing watches into exams. Banning exams would be interesting, because some students have been bringing smartwatches in and we're poking away at them. And the invigilators felt that they weren't sufficiently able to distinguish. So they said, right, you know what, just no. And I was just asked to write a piece about this, and I had to say, well, look, you know, the reality is it probably won't be long before we say, bring your electronic device into the exam. The exam isn't about testing that you can regurgitate, rote fashion, this stuff that you have been taught. It's about how you marshal evidence. It's about the conclusions you draw. Use all the information, draw upon it freely. We've got a stack of tablets or laptops here if you need one, and that will be perhaps before us greying folk retire, that open book exam will probably be the norm. But today, you can't have it. Put the watch away. But the good news is that help is here, and I think we've seen some wonderful examples yesterday and today of things that people have been doing. We've supported quite a few of these, I know, so it's quite nice. As someone who now works for JISC, it's quite nice to see the JISC logo on quite a lot of projects. And this is exactly the kind of thing that I always wanted to see JISC doing, so it's really good to see the results of this. I had some great thoughts about whether all this digital stuff is something that you should just have as a matter of course. Is it an entitlement? Is it an enhancement to existing practice? Should it just be there? How do we get to the point where it is just there? Lecture capture of all lectures? Do we really want that? Maybe you just want the highlights. We've seen some good stuff around the developing digital literacy work that JISC's done. We've had some handouts there. I hope people have taken those away and digested them. I think they're all gone now, so that's promising. Oh no, there's a couple left. Sarah has a couple at the back, which she may thrust at you when you leave. So that was very good for me. I enjoyed that. It's nice to see that the work that we've sponsored and the work that you guys have been involved with us on has paid off. I think there's some interesting questions though about, for example, measuring impact. If we say, okay, this has been really successful, actually, how do we measure it? I like Peter's comment about, well, you know, likes. I can buy likes. Likes are a commodity. There's no inherent value to a like. It's just it's a signifier. You can't use it as currency except in that sense. So there's a little bit more to do there, I think. Lots of good stuff about learning analytics, and I think learning analytics is something we're going to be hearing more and more about. Digital capability that goes beyond using pedagogical tools and gets into data and using data in sensible ways. And I really loved Louise's comment, which was exactly the same as mine. What's that coming over the hill? I was about to tweet that, Sarah. I thought, is it a monster? I couldn't quite press send quickly enough. And so that real message about innovation that begins at home, and I won't dwell on this, but we've had so many great examples just yesterday and today. I really love the UCL DigiFest, not just because they called it DigiFest. I think that's a very good name for a conference. But the simple fact that the students were hugely involved in it, and I really hope that you can keep the DigiFest concept going and get more and more students involved with it. Obviously, you've got to start somewhere, and starting small but thinking big isn't a bad thing. And the here, it's always nice to hear about the here. I know that whole question about open badges and recording experiences, things that could contribute to your personal development, we're still really taking baby steps with putting things into here and what we do with it. And it'll be interesting to think about how some of the stuff that we talked about yesterday and today will ultimately be reflected and used. And this idea about digital literacy as a core competency, and well, are you shoved from pillar to post at your institution when you start to talk about this? Do you have a strong champion? Do you need a chief digital officer? I'm going to meet one tomorrow. I'm meeting the chief digital officer from Deakin University in Australia. And I've got quite a lot of questions to ask him about how does that work? What resources do you have at your disposal? How much of a battle are you fighting? Or are you preaching to the converted? So that was all great. I loved it. And more power to all of you for doing that work. I mentioned a couple of examples there. I think iChamps from Southampton is another brilliant project. iChamps is something that, everybody could be doing that. I think a few people said, okay, how do I copy this? How do I do this at my institution? So really the message from me was about people, not technology. And that's why I thought the selfie competition was particularly good. So, there we are, and I'll whiz through a few of the selfies here. I thought that was a wonderful thing, because this could so easily have just been about, the technology. I'll put the technology away. It's about the people much more than the technology. And, of course, being where we are, it would be rude not to get a photo or two in the Blue Peter Garden with Tinky Winky and all the rest of it. Sorry, upsy daisy. And so that was kind of all I wanted to say, apart from, I think Ian was relieved that there haven't been any selfie sticks yet, and you've actually just set the bar for next time, I think. So, thanks very much. And thank you for having me.
Very conscious of time, some people like me, and these guys have to catch a flight. Could I maybe just one quick question for Martin? Anyone? No? Alright. Just a couple of things then to round off, folks. It's great seeing Martin's presentation. Actually, it's quite mind-boggling how much we've covered just in the last, it's only a day and a bit. Sorry, wrong place. So, switching in classic news to other news, quick announcement from the Staff Development Group, the survey that will be launched on the directors list today. So that invite has gone out, will go out, it will go out shortly, okay? Sam, do we have winners of our 12th competition? Yes, we do. Can I bring up the Rise board and is it going to work? Let me have a look. It's a little bit small, but looks to me that we have control plus. Yes, I don't even know where the control key is on this blooming keyboard. Never mind the plus key. There we go. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you for the voice on the floor. So we have both a winners and a runners-up prize. So in $10 fashion, runner-up is Steve. And Steve, you just have an extra bag for your video. We'll intersperse the thanks. Sam and Fiona McNeil, whose idea it was to use the RISE board, the staff, the Automagic and the manual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you don't know who you are.
Oh, thank
So
you.
this is an ID card from the War Museum,
Oh, fabulous. Oh,
a spy lollipop, and a pencil.
thank you very much.
And do we have Andrew for the winning prize? With a fairly spectacular, what was your final score? 400?
Actually, it's about 484
What?
in the end.
My word, were you paying attention to anything or just tweeting the whole time? Some of my colleagues back home, they don't need to come, they're just watching the Twitter feed.
To be honest, we did actually have to take Elaine off because she was kind of about 500.
Are you getting it out?
There
Okay, mate.
you go. Enjoy.
Wonderful. Awesome, well done. Thanks so much to you guys for letting us bring the RISE board in at the last minute. We hadn't really planned for it, but we thought this could be quite a good fun thing to do. We will ask for feedback on it, please. That's part of the deal for us doing this. Yes, it's a little bit of fun, but equally it's a little bit of a chance for us to try something new at the very last minute. Fiona McNeil's written up a blog on it, but if you do fill in the survey, which I think you'll already have an email invitation to, I certainly had mine, when you fill it in, as well as comment on the whole event, could you comment on the RISE element of it too, please? Do we have John Cartwright? Hi, John. We did a quick raffle. We raised £210 for the Archdeacon's case. Thank you very much. John has gone there. Thank you. If it's not my name, I'll not be happy.
Alan Dawes.
Alan? Thank you, John. Awesome, and the prize is fairly self-explanatory. It's what's something. Superb. Is anybody here from the Between the Wars team?
From last night's quiz?
Yeah, come back up again then. We're up.
Second half of the prize.
Yes, the other part of the prize is some gold wrapped chocolates. These are also plastic. Enjoy. As a quick reminder, all the slides, all the presentations, all the recordings from Collaborate that Peter's been taken, plus all the tweets, everything will be collated and made available via the UCISA website. Gaz, the photographer, who's done a brilliant, brilliant job, is still at the back. Quick applause for Gaz, please. As well as taking on board Sue Beckingham's digital profile guidance and setting up a LinkedIn account last night, he's also put all, or will put all the pictures up on his Flickr account, and we'll circulate how to get access to that. And Gaz, thank you, it was brilliant. You did way over and above, I think, what we'd give expected, so thank you. So keep on tweeting, keep the story going, and that's it. Time to go home. Thank you all so much. Just a last quick thank you. Thank you to all the presenters, of course, for the time before coming here, doing the preparation and being here. Thank you all for getting up the time to come here too. We thank Gaz, we thank Pete, we thank David for doing the AV support. Who have we missed out? Must have missed out somebody. Fiona? And you guys at HQ, of course. Thank you so much. Yeah, the event team are brilliant. So thank you all. Have a safe journey home.